Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Garden Hour with University of Missouri Extension. We are glad you could join us this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Schutter, and I am the horticulture specialist in the University of Missouri Extension office in Kirksville. I am joined today by my colleagues, Gwen Funk, who will monitor the chat, by Dr. Peng Tian, who has changed his name to ask questions here. And I'm also joined by Debi Kelly and Katie Kammler, who will be presenting. Let's take a look at this map. This shows you the horticulture specialist around the state. We do need to update it. Manoj Chetri has taken a position with Penn State, and so he is no longer covering those counties you see in light blue. But you can find your county on the map and then reach out to the horticulture specialist covering your county. Although, like we say every week, all of us are glad to help out, and you can reach out to any of us. This Garden Hour is being live streamed. If you want to go back and watch it, you can go to our University of Missouri Extension YouTube channel. It's the youtube.com/MUIPM, and you can watch the Garden Hour again from today, or you can watch previous Garden Hours. Also, a snippet will be made from one of the topics that will be presented, and you can watch that, as well as ones that have been created in the past. And with that, I will introduce Jared. We have Jared with us. He is our tech guy behind the scenes, and we are always glad to have him with us to help us out. And with that, Jared, I will turn it over to you for the weather report.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Missouri Weekly Weather Summary. The big story in Missouri over the past week was keeping our eyes on the remnants of Hurricane Francine as it tracked north into the continental United States. And here we can look at the 7-day precipitation totals, which essentially kind of shows where those remnants of Francine dumped some more rainfall here. And overall, the forecast from last week was pretty spot on with the track of the storm and where the heaviest rainfall would be. But here we see in Missouri, only really kind of extreme southeast Missouri and down into the Boot Heel really got some significant rainfall totals. So anywhere you see the yellow on this map is greater than 2 inches. Anywhere that's green is greater than about a ½ inch of rainfall. And so we see here up to 4 inches in southeast Missouri, but overall, only a few spots really got greater than those 2 inches. Now, farther to the northwest, you'll notice a really sharp divide from that green to the blue, and we really didn't see much of that precipitation get farther northwest into the state. And we did have some kind of isolated showers for a few days. You can see a few green splotches on the map, but overall, pretty dry for those that missed out on any rainfall from Francine here. And so we can look at these were the state's highest rainfall totals over the past week. And so definitely several counties here that did have locations that picked up greater than 2 inches of rainfall. But when we talk about a tropical system, we're used to these kind of heavy rainfall totals, and 3.96 inches, not overly impressive for a tropical system, but still that is about a month's worth of rainfall in 1 week down there in Ripley County. And so looking at that rainfall, we're still, for most of us in the state, unless you're in southeast Missouri, behind on rainfall, and very behind in most spots for September. And so on the right here shows our accumulated precipitation for the month of September. And you'll notice a lot of gray on the map. That gray is showing locations that have not received any rainfall through September 17th at this point. Anywhere that's kind of these golden or yellow colors is less than a ½ inch of rainfall. And so we can see it's been a very dry start to September for most of Missouri. And so looking at our major sites here, we can see those rainfall deficits are pretty impressive. Essentially, Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, and Columbia haven't received any rainfall. And so what we see there is anywhere from 1.5 inches to just over 2 inches of rain, 2 inches below normal for the month already. Our temperatures, even though we're warming up this week, we've actually had a lot of kind of fall weather so far in September. Before Francine, we had a lot of crisp temperatures and cool nights, and then the cloud cover from Francine helped keep temperatures down. So far for the month, temperatures are actually running below average here. So anywhere from just below 0 to maybe 2 degrees cooler than average, but we'll likely see that change with the forecast over the next coming days and the week ahead, really. And so with this lack of rainfall that we've seen in August and now into September, drought conditions continue to be a concern across the state. And so this is the most recent U.S. Drought Monitor map that was released on Thursday, September 12th. So there will be an additional update to this map tomorrow, and I would expect even more expansion of the depictions of drought and dryness on this map. But as of last Thursday, here we see a good portion of Missouri that's considered at least abnormally dry. That's where you see that yellow color there. Also a lot of tan along the Kansas border, down south into southwest Missouri, a widespread moderate drought conditions there. And then going over to the eastern half of the state as well, along the Illinois border, lots of moderate drought and even severe drought, so D2, where you see that kind of orange in southeast Missouri, getting down into southern Illinois and western Kentucky as well. So not a lot of the state that's actually normal on moisture right now. Most of us are pretty dry, so watching these kind of early fall drought conditions continue to emerge. And so looking ahead at what we might expect to end the week and get into the next week, here are our forecast high temperatures throughout the end of the week. So starting on the left, these are the highs for today. A good portion of the state going to touch 90 degrees, which is about 10 degrees above average for this time of the year. So more of a summertime air mass, and that's going to stick around through the end of the week. So look on Thursday, here in the middle, a little bit warmer, so highs getting up into the lower 90s, even up to 95 degrees in Joplin in southwest Missouri, and very similar, almost a repeat of Thursday on Friday. So seeing a lot of those low to mid 90s in southwest Missouri for the high temperatures. So warm temperatures to end the week, but the good news is we will see an expected cold front to start moving across the area, and then hopefully spread some rain chances as well as cool us off. So let's take a look at how this might look here. So this is our forecast rainfall for tomorrow. So we'll stay dry here on Wednesday, but Thursday into Friday, we can see this moisture across the upper Midwest and Great Plains, up to a ½ inch of rainfall in Missouri. So this is going to be a pretty dry cold front, just some showers along it. But we do see that front kind of extending there. Now on the right is the convective outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. There is a marginal risk for severe weather with this line of storms along the cold front tomorrow. And so this would be because we have these very warm temperatures, giving those storms a little bit more energy to work with, but overall not expecting much of a significant threat for the severe weather, just kind of an outside chance with some of these storms tomorrow. So this will help to cool us off. And then behind that cold front, we'll kind of see a second system really strengthen and move over the central part of the U.S. behind this cold front. And so here I'm showing maps showing our 24-hour precipitation forecast. Starting on the top left, this is Friday. So really just a few light showers and clouds kind of behind that cold front and lingering. But then if we move on to our right, getting into the weekend on Saturday, we see a bigger kind of push of moisture into northwest Missouri. This continues on the bottom left here Sunday into Monday, and then some lingering moisture on Monday and Tuesday as the system finally pushes east out of the area. So we can add all these maps up here and look at, this is our precipitation forecast here for the next week ahead. And really we see a pretty good chance of moisture essentially north of I-70. You're looking at anywhere from an 1.5 inches to 3 inches in northwest Missouri. That's in the forecast there. So in these areas where we're talking about 1 to 3 inches of rainfall in northern Missouri, Definitely some much needed rainfall that can help with the drought situation there. But then look at southeast Missouri. So roughly south and east of I-44, again, a pretty sharp cutoff with our precipitation and maybe up to a half inch of rainfall in southeast Missouri. And so that's still below our weekly average for this time of year. And so even though this area did benefit from Francine, not much rainfall additionally in the forecast there. So some good news here, but hopefully we can see that rainfall a little bit more widespread across all of Missouri over the next week. And then as we really look ahead, so rainfall over the weekend is going to keep our temperatures closer to normal. But if we look at the week 2 outlooks, so these are our 8 to 14 day temperature and precipitation outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center, we see on the left here for our temperatures leaning above average. And so expecting those warmer than average temperatures to continue throughout the month of September, possibly the next 2 weeks, flipping our September to a warmer than average month. And then unfortunately, it's not a high probability, but are leaning drier than average in the forecast for week 2 for really much of the central United States. And so I'll also leave us this here from the Climate Prediction Center. This is their seasonal drought outlook that really tries to pull together both the temperature and precipitation forecast with ongoing drought conditions to see how that might evolve throughout the season. And so here we do see this is valid for September to November. And we see some of these yellows, especially in southwest Missouri, showing further drought development likely, and then also some drought persistence across Missouri as well. So still some uncertainty in these long-range forecasts, but overall, the warmer and drier conditions this fall could lead to some persistence of drought into the season. And so with that, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for your all's attention, and let's hope for some more rain this week. So thank you.
All right. I failed to mention earlier that that was Zach with the weather report, and he was not able to join us today. So he made a recording, and Jared, being our techie guy, played that for us. So we appreciate both of them assisting with this garden hour. We did have a question that came in from the St. Louis area, and it was regarding a plant or weed in the lawn, and it was lespedeza, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So these photos were sent to us, and it's been identified as a lespedeza, which we all know is a somewhat of a hard to control weed, and you certainly don't want it to spread in your yard. And you can see from the picture on the right that it is spreading in that yard. So this plant needs to be controlled. And what you want to do is use a herbicide containing triclopyr. So there's really no method or anything organic that is going to get rid of it. So you really do need to use a herbicide, and it needs to contain the active ingredient called triclopyr. Most of our lawn herbicides for broadleaf weed control will contain several ingredients. If you look at the bottom of the label, it will say active ingredients. And for lawn weeds, there's typically multiple ingredients. Look for one that contains triclopyr. Triclopyr is used to control hard to control weeds like creeping Charlie, white clover, and lespedeza. So that's why you need to look for one that has that triclopyr in it, because lespedeza is one of those hard to control weeds. It's really important to read the label directions and follow those label directions exactly as they say. So it's going to tell you how to mix it. It's going to tell you the safety precautions and when it's going to be safe to plant or reseed. Another thing you can do is maintain a healthy lawn. And you can do this by making sure your pH is at the proper level for lawns, which is 6 to 7. And then also fertilize the lawn as needed. Fall is a good time to do a soil test. So if you haven't done one in the last 2 to 3 years, or you've never done one and your lawn may not look so good, please consider taking a soil sample and bringing it to your local extension center, and we will send it to our MU soil testing lab to have it tested. And then you're not going to be guessing what you need to put on. It's going to tell you exactly how many pounds of nutrients you need and if you need lime to raise a pH, or if you need organic matter. So do consider taking a soil sample for a soil test if your lawn is not looking so good. But having a healthy lawn and just keeping the lawn maintained will help prevent weeds from creeping in or coming in to your lawn. All right, our next topic is putting roses to bed for winter, and Debbie is going to talk about that.
Yeah, so as many of you may know, or if not, I was in Jefferson County as the horticulture specialist, and now I'm back in Boone County again. And the house that I purchased actually has a couple of different roses in the front in a garden bed underneath some windows, and it looks really, really nice. I'm happy to have roses. However, I was like, I'm not 100% sure how I'm supposed to take care of those for the winter, because I'm thinking of what I need to do, what are some next steps as far as what I kind of plan to do in the future. And those, as a gardener, we think about those things. So I did a little bit of searching to find out just for myself and thought I'd share with you all. And you all may already know this information, but I thought I would let you know. So the roses that you're actually seeing right here are actually some of the roses that are from my bed in front. So I feel like they're really pretty. So there are the most common types of roses that are out there, and it really does make a difference in how some of the care can be taken for wintering some of these. And the most popular ones that are out there for the modern types of roses are the hybrid tea, the floribunda, and the grandiflora. And so with these, we just go over them real quickly. The hybrid tea is actually the one that is the most popular of all the different roses that we have in our gardens for today. They have very large flowers. They can have long stems. They come in all kinds of colors and they're just gorgeous. However, they really don't have a true blue or a black. They are vigorous growers. However, they do need winter protection and pest management practices as well. When we look at the floribunda, they are an intermediate flower size. So they're going to be a smaller type of a rose once it opens up as compared to the hybrid tea. They are slightly hardier than the hybrid tea. They have a great abundance of blooms. That's a smaller scale type of a bush. So it's more of a bushy, shorter type of a rose bush. And it's great if you're going to do mass plantings. And I actually believe that the roses I have in front of my house are actually a floribunda type. So notice that the hybrid says that they do need some winter protection. The floribunda says they are slightly hardier than the hybrid, but they still do need to have some winter protection. And then we have the grandiflora, and those flowers are generally double, as you can see in the picture. That's really pretty right there with the pink edging and the white internal part of the petals. They lack fragrance, which is awfully interesting. And they have flower clusters that are on tall stems. And so we can kind of decipher what type of rose we have if we didn't select them ourselves. So that's just a little bit of a general description of the most modern types of roses that are out there today. So the goal of overwintering is to protect those roses, especially at the union graft. And so most of our modern roses today are going to be grafted. So we have the scion and we have the rootstock. And so the scion is the top part that's going to have the canes and the flowers. And we usually love them for how they bloom, what their color variations might be, but they may not have the best root system for that type of a rose bush. So we'll take a rose bush with really great root system and we'll graft the top of it, or the rootstock, to the top of what we really are looking for, which is the beauty of those roses. That graft area does need to be protected for the winter time. So we just want to make sure that we have the roses protected, because if that graft actually has an issue and it actually gets damaged, that rose bush will continue to bloom. However, what happens is that the root stock itself will actually start sending up new canes. And so whatever that old variety was from that rootstock, those are the colors of the roses that are going to be coming out. So if one year you have these beautiful pink roses, and then the next year your roses are a totally different color from what you're accustomed to, chances are that that graft had some winter damage to it. So that's one of the main reasons why we want to protect our roses. We also want to make sure that we keep the temperature more uniform throughout the winter, because some of them actually lack the cold hardiness. And so we did see with the hybrids as well as with the Floribunda. Have that one right? Let me go back and check. Yes, the Floribunda. Actually, they have better winter protection, but not as much as the Floribunda, and the hybrids definitely need to have some of that winter protection. So what does that actually look like? So first of all, we want to get those roses ready for the winter. So we want to make sure that we prune those roses back. So if there's a lot of excessive top growth on our roses, and if we have really tall canes, we want to cut back those canes to about 2/3 of their original height and the growth that they've actually put on for that year. If they're a shorter, more bushier type of a rose bush, where they're going to have a lot more canes, such as the ones that I have in front of my house, we want to only cut those back about 3/4 of what their height was. So think about how tall those canes are. Do they need to be cut back 2/3 of their height, or 3/4 of their height? And then we also want to look to see where are the weak canes growing on that bush. And so we definitely want to take those weak canes out, cut them down as low as you could possibly get without damaging the root ball or the graft, and try to get those bad canes out there, those weak ones, because if there's some sort of a disease that's starting in that particular cane, or there's an insect perhaps overwintering, we don't want that, and we don't want it to spread to the rest of the bush. So that's one of the reasons why we want to remove some of those weak canes, not knowing for sure, because it may not bloom really nice next year. Then what we also want to do is remove any of the debris that's underneath that rose bush. As those leaves fall from the plant, we want to remove as much of that as we can. If there's any leaves that are still on the bush and just hanging on in general, even though they're not green, they might be brown, we want to go ahead and try to remove those leaves. And the reason for that is that if there's any kind of a disease, such as black spot, that black spot can actually overwinter in the debris that's left underneath that rose bush. So that's one of our best management practices of trying to prevent that disease from returning next year to our roses. So go ahead and remove all the leaves as much as you can. And then we want to look at how do we actually protect the roses. So usually what we'll do is we'll build up a mound around that graft. Now in this picture, the graft is being shown under the ground. So you want to make sure, first of all, that you plant the rose according to how it needs to be. And sometimes our soil will settle and that root graft might actually come above the soil line or be right at that soil line, but we do want to protect it. So you might want to take some soil and just mound it lightly around the top of the bush where all the canes are coming together. And then you'd like to go ahead and maybe put some straw or some evergreen. If you're snipping and cutting back any of your evergreens, or you have some of that that's kind of laying off on the side that you don't know what to do or how to recycle, you can go ahead and use that on top of the soil as well. So we want to mulch around the base of the plant, including that graft, because that's the most sensitive part of the rose for winter damage. The types of mulch, you can use soil, but use soil that's from a different area, because you don't want to lessen the soil that's around the bush itself, because we want to make sure all of those roots are protected. You can use evergreen boughs, bark, wood chips, aged sawdust, straw, anything along in that line. If it's not completely decomposed in the spring, we want to make sure that we take the evergreen boughs, the bark, the wood chips, and the aged sawdust away, so that it doesn't take away the nitrogen in order to decompose that from those microorganisms in the soil, because we want that nitrogen to be there for the roses to grow well. You want about 10 to 12 inches of that base of the rose bush to be covered. And then throughout the winter, just check on it because things like to settle, and you might want to add a little bit more mulch as you go through the winter season. So every so often, just check through it and see if that needs to be added. And then the timing, we want to add mulch, but we don't want to do it too early. So right now it's early, but we don't know exactly what the temperatures are going to be and when all of the leaves are going to fall off of our rose bushes. So we have to be careful. We're informing you now so that you can plan ahead, but you want to keep the stem warm and you want to keep it moist. So continue watering those roses. If you add too much, and once the weather breaks and we're really coming into the fall, they're dropping their leaves, we want to not water so much with those rose bushes because the canes can actually get a canker. A canker is kind of like a sore. So if you do water, and if we're in a drought this winter, water on the outside of that mulched mound so that it doesn't get onto the canes, because if it does, it could cause some different diseases. You want to make sure that if you're really concerned about black spot, there is a fungicide that you could use. Remember, the fungicide is going to keep that black spot in check. It's not necessarily going to kill it. There is nothing fungicide out there that will actually kill the fungus of any kind. And if you've got knockout roses, they have been bred for cold hardiness, and they do not necessarily have to be winterized in any fashion. So good luck with your roses if you've got them.
Thank you, Debbie. Great information there. And now Dr. Peng Tian is going to talk about oak tree diseases.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peng Tian. I'm the director of the MU Plant Diagnostic Clinic. It's my great pleasure to be in this Zoom call talking about the oak diseases. This talk will be a little bit unconventional because, it's instead of a disease fact sheets, I would consider this like a photo shows for all the oak diseases. Hopefully, after this talk, you would recognize some diseases in your neighborhood, your community, or wherever you visited in the future. So in this talk, I'm gonna show you lots of diseases: foliar disease, trunk disease, root rot diseases, wood rot diseases, and also some disease caused by environmental factors. And this is about time we're gonna start seeing fall colors. However, not all fall color are great, especially when you have some plant problems or tree diseases. This could turn the tree to be very unsightful. Like this one in this photo, definitely this tree has a little bit kind of like a sectional, kind of like thinning, lack of leaves. So that will drive the homeowner a little bit concerned. So more photos. If you look at this tree, it does not look fine, right? You saw some flagging leaves, yellowing. What could be the cause, right? If you look at the tree, several limbs or several branches, there are not too many leaves. And if you look on the ground, there are just so many dropping leaves. That can be very concerning. But by looking at the oak disease or the plant health problem, it definitely just case by case. You really need to look into it, do your own diagnosis. Today, I'm gonna start with the foliar disease because oak tree has many different foliar diseases. That's a disease on the leaves. Let's start with oak leaf blister. You may think this is like a gauze, but this is a fungal pathogen can cause those blister symptoms. And it's very different with insect gall. And over time, it will turn the leaves very crispy and curling. And eventually, it will cause defoliation. Next one is anthracnose. This is a very common fungal disease in the cool and wet summer or early fall. And I would call that a dry disease because it always causes leaf curl and dry. As you can see, they fall a little bit towards the vein. And the lesion gonna start from those veins and then get expanded bigger and bigger, and all the lesion will cover the most part of the leaf tissue, and the leaf gonna die. And as you can see, there's some fruiting body on the surface of the lesion, and they can produce spores that can transmit it to the nearby leaves. That's how they kill the leaves. And over time, you will have a lot of necrosis, a lot of lesion on the leaves. That's anthracnose disease. Tubercle leaf spot. I'm receiving a lot of phone calls and samples that I diagnose with tubercle leaf spots. The leaf spot is definitely different with anthracnose because the leaf spots are normally round, and they will start with a small circle, small round spot, and getting bigger and bigger, and eventually it will reach, I would say, maybe around like a 1/4 size of a quarter. So it will not go beyond that, but as the many leaf spots connect with each other, it will cause necrosis, and eventually it will also it will lead to the defoliation. I mentioned defoliation multiple times today. And powder mildew, you must be very familiar with this disease, and it can cause those fuzzy and fluffy fungus growing on the surface of leaves. And over time, on the top of the white fungus, there will be the black dots growing on the surface. That's actually their overwinter structure, and cause climatologist, and they can stay on the plant debris for overwinter, and they can resist all the cold weather and also other stress. So next year, with a lot of rain, those structure gonna produce spores and fly back to the tree, cause more foliar diseases. Let's look at the next one. Oh, sooty mold. If you have the plants that are covered with really insightful black substance all over the leaf, it's gonna be very annoying to look every day. So sooty mold actually is not a disease. It is just a bunch of fungus growing. But the reason caused sooty mold could be insects, especially aphids. As aphids infest the leaves, and they can produce a lot of sugar, a lot of a substance with high sugar content, and those high sugar content substance can attract fungus and ants, so that wherever you can find a lot of aphids, there must be lots of sooty mold and ants. And they are just very superficial fungus. They do not cause disease. Although this section I call it foliar disease. This is actually not a disease. For controlling this, there are not too many ways that you can control it. I would say control the aphids will be the priority to get rid of the sooty mold. Oak wilt. I mentioned this disease multiple times. This is a very severe disease. If your red oak got affected by this disease, normally the tree gonna shed the leaves, all the leaves, and die in the same season. It normally can cause those tip burning, and the yellowing and brown area gonna become bigger and bigger and cause the whole leaves yellowing, and then the leaf gonna drop. Remember the photo I showed in the beginning? There's a lot of leaves on the ground. I tested, it's oak wilt positive. Another disease that are showing a similar symptom is called a bacterial leaf spot. So oak wilt is caused by a fungal pathogen, but a bacterial leaf spot is caused by a bacteria. Its name is Xylella fastidiosa. So it can also cause similar symptom, but there's a slight difference that it can cause those yellow edge, and it won't kill the tree in the same season. There's a big difference between the two diseases is that oak wilt can only infect oak, red oak, sometimes white oak, but a bacterial leaf spot has really broad range of hosts. Not only oak, maple tree, sycamore, or other trees like this photo. It can infect many trees. It will not kill tree in 1 year, but depends on situation of the tree. It will eventually die due to this disease. Oak galls, and there's a well, if you want me to talk about oak gall caused by the insect, you need to give me about 2 hours, because this is a totally new kingdom of the disease. There are multiple oak galls here, just 2 represented one. The goldy oak gall here, and this one the jumping oak gall. And most of the oak galls are formed by insects, especially wasp, and they don't cause direct injury to the tree, although it can cause some foliar diseases, but they don't cause major issue to the tree. And definitely it really depends on the susceptibility of the tree, or whether the tree is under stress. The infection of the formation of gall definitely can suppress a lot of transportation of nutrient or water on the stem, and it also can affect the photosynthesis of the leaves. So I think I may need another talk to only focus on different galls. So this is just 2 representative gall diseases. All right, let's talk about trunk disease. I would like to summarize what I mentioned of foliar disease. Besides the bacterial leaf spotch and oak wilt, all the other leaf diseases I mentioned previously, you don't need a specific chemical treatment. That means you don't need to spray any fungicide or bactericide. You can just wait until next year. And normally, even though you lose most of the leaf this year, the oak should be fine to push out, to leaf out more leaves next year. So don't worry. But for oak wilt and bacterial leaf spotch, you need to get it tested, confirm it, and think about the treatment. Now let's talk about trunk disease. Trunk disease is definitely different level compared with foliar disease. It is cause more severe problem, and most time if you get this, the tree gonna die. The first one is oak wilt. You'll be like, did we just talk about oak wilt? Actually, yes, but oak wilt is a vascular disease, infect the trunk and the stem. As you take the stem tissue, you can see there's apparent the black streaks. That's an indicator of the infection of the oak wilt fungus. Hypoxylin canker, you may have seen this type of gray color and black colors patches on the tree. That's the indication of the infection of the hypoxylin canker. Over time, this fungus will reside on the trunk, absorbing all the nutrition, weaken the tree. The tree may not die very soon, but over time, it adds a lot of stress to the tree, and it may eventually kill the tree. In Endothere canker, relative rare disease, you may not see that a lot. It can cause those orange colors, fruiting bodies on the trunk or on the branch. If you see this dots, orange dot, that means the fungus already penetrated into the wood tissue, and it should be everywhere in the tree. It really depends on the resistance of the tree. The tree may get along well with it, but if the tree is really susceptible, it will cause canker. It will cause the branch dieback. Lichen. Many people ask, what are those green things? So this is actually not harmful to the tree. This is just the organism that live on the tree. They do not absorb any nutrition. They don't compete with the tree. So if you have that, this is not a big problem you should worry about. Okay, let's switch gear talking about the wood rot disease. If you have the wood rot, it's including the bud rot and the root rot, and normally the tree is the tree will be heavily affected by the growth of the fungus, and eventually the tree gonna die. It's basically your choice to determine whether you want to cut the tree or you want to keep the tree for a longer time. So the first one, the armillaria root rot, it can produce mushroom called honey mushroom in the base, but under the bark, you can definitely see those mycelium growing, and they're kind of penetrating into under the bark and sucking all the nutrition. and the tree's whole condition will be weakened. Over time, it will die. We saw this a lot on the dead wood, but they can also actively infect the living tree. The root and the butt rot, Krishmara, this rot disease normally produce those blackened colors, but not the like patches, like I mentioned, the hypoxylene. They normally have infected the base area, and similar with armillaria, there's no cure for this, and it will continuously weaken the tree's health. If you have that, I would suggest you to continue good health, good maintenance to your tree, add fertilizer, add a proper irrigation, do your best to extend the lifetime for a tree and prolong the tree health condition. The last one is you may see those a lot of time. There's a big giant conch growing out from the trunk and from the base. The bud rot is one of them. And this one called kind of like the weeping mushroom. You see a lot of dew produce that. This is a similar issue, like I mentioned before, other wood rot. This is just the indicator that there's a lot of fungi already growing inside of the tree. And once they get mature, they grow out from the base or grow out from the trunk. And there's no, remedy or cure for this type of disease. And you may need to invite the arborist to visit your site to test the tree, the wood rot, the extent, just in case the tree may die or may fall in the future. So normally, right after either the tornado or hurricane or big windy day, the tree was suddenly died. And not just because the wind is too strong, it's just because the wood is already rotten for a long time. Last one is environmental factor related disease. The first one is herbicide damage. The herbicide can affect your vegetable, can affect your garden. They can also affect your trees. Although you think a tree is much bigger than your veggies or your fruit trees or your perennial, the annual, they are very susceptible to herbicide. They can cause a curling and cupping symptoms, especially if the tree is close to the agriculture production sites. The next one, the winter injury, I just cited the photo of the maple, but it can also cause injury. The freezing injury can also cause damage to the oak tree, normally showing those split bark tissue. Physical injury, which can also include winter injury, but this one is more damage. If someone drive the mower improperly, keep hitting the base of the tree, it will cause those physical injury. And sometimes the severe cases, the tree may die due to those physical injuries. And this could be a winter injury or some other insect damage. Regarding insect, this is you must be familiar with this. We have a lot of cicada this year, and right after the peak, we started seeing those flagging, yellowing branches, and those are cicada injury. And if you pick the fallen twigs, look into detail, you can definitely see the injuries on the small stems caused by cicada. They basically, the female cicada makes the injury and lay eggs onto it. Mistletoe, this is a parasitic plant. I'm not sure when I saw that in Missouri. Maybe you have seen that or somewhere else. I just learned last week, actually, when I was in a field trip in the state of Maine. And this is actually a parasitic plant. They normally produce the cluster, like a ball shape of the plants, and they compete with the tree and will compete for the lights, compete for the water and nutrients. So this is a very interesting disease. The last one I want to mention, the drought. We do have a severe drought issue here in Missouri, and you may see some dead branches and especially on the top of the tree. So basically, if you have those type of stress, it will kind of open door for the other fungal diseases. So continue water your tree, especially when we're experiencing drought, and to keep your tree healthy is very important. Lastly, I still want to promote our service. Thanks to Missouri Department Conservation, they provide funds to support the services to test for oak wilt and bacterial leaf scotch testing. So if you submit a sample to us, it will be completely free. If you see dying oak trees, please let me know. Send me some photos so we can start from there. This will also allow us to study the urban tree death problem and monitor some new diseases or new epidemics of the oak diseases in Missouri. So the last slide is actually your turn. After reviewing all the oak diseases, you need to watch out for all the different symptoms that are representing different diseases. So from this photo, thanks to Joe from Ohio State University, and as you can see, number 1, this disease close to the vein causing those necrosis. This is anthracnose, which is relatively the first or second disease I mentioned. And number 4, you saw those whitish powder thing. That's a powder mildew. And the number 2 and number 3, apparently fungus cannot cause those damage. I would say insect damage. This one, the actual Japanese beetle. This one, I believe it's a leaf miner. So go to your yard after the garden hour, pick your oak leaves or your neighbor's oak leaves. Take a look, and figure out how many diseases you can find. Last, I want to apologize. I made these slides in a rush, and I didn't put a lot of photo credits for each photo, and this is not for commercial use, but I apologize for not adding additional information for each photo. So that's all I have. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Peng. Those were some good photos and great information that will be helpful. And now Debbie is going to tell us how not to plant a tree.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I've moved to a new location here in Columbia. And as I walk around the neighborhood, I see these different trees and I was like, oh my gosh, oh, I wish they had talked to me before they had planted those trees. So let's talk real quickly about the correct ways to plant trees. And then I'll show you a bunch of pictures of what things that people have actually done wrong that you need to take into consideration. So the best time to plant the trees is going to be in late fall. So again, offering this a little bit earlier since this is our last weekly garden hour. We're going to start monthly. So the 3rd Wednesday of October, we'll do another one. So this may or may not, depends upon the weather and the temperatures and things like that. But I wanted to make sure that you had some of this information ahead of time so that if you decided you were going to plant some trees. So we want to make sure we plant in the fall. We also want to make sure about the hole size. A lot of people are going to dig a hole that's going to be the size of whatever the pot is that you purchase a tree and go, okay, that hole is big enough. When in reality, there are some things we need to think about. So you don't want the hole to be deeper than the container's height that they're actually grown in. And there's a good reason for that. And you'll kind of find that as we talk along here. The actual hole diameter, you want it to be at least 2 to 3 times wider or rounder or diameter than what the actual tree is in itself, because those trees are going to all of a sudden go, wow, I've got space. I'm going to start spreading out. A mistake that a lot of people do is they're like, I've dug this hole. I want this tree to grow great. I'm going to put in a bunch of compost and peat moss. I'm going to make it the best soil so the tree will live. And that's super fantastic, but only do that to 20% of the soil that you have. So the other 80% is going to be the soil that you just took out of that hole. The reason for that is that those roots are going to start to grow. They become spoiled and accustomed to that wonderful soil mixture that you just made. When those roots spread out, they're actually going to start going outward into the soil, the native soil that's there, and go, ooh, I don't like that. So I'm going to stay in this hole and just keep growing my roots around in a circle in that hole, because you've made that hole beautiful soil. And I think you and I are the same way with things that we like. We're going to continue to eat this particular food that we like a whole lot. And you go back to the store, and what do? You get the same things that you like. So it's the same kind of a concept. So we need to take that into consideration. Trees also have what is called a root flare or a tree flare, and that should be planted at ground level. And a lot of people will plant that either too high or too low. We also want to mulch around our tree, because those roots of the tree are in competition for water as well as nutrients with the turf. And so we need to think about that. They are in competition. So we want to make a donut with our mulch around the tree. We don't want to make a volcano. I have some really good pictures about that. We also want to protect our trees if they are a soft wooded tree from sun scald. And Peng just showed us some great trees with some splits, and that's due to winter injury. It heats up really nice in February. The juices of the tree, the moisture in the cells start to thaw out, and then the plummets at night, and those freeze back up, and those cells will burst because ice expands, correct? So those are some things to think about when you're planting a tree. So I want to go and make sure that everyone understands. Most people think the roots grow straight down with a tree. It may have one major root that goes down, but the vast majority of those roots are going to go parallel to the soil surface, and they usually are about 12 inches deep. So they're really not that deep of a root system. So keep that in mind. The other thing that's important for you to understand is that a tree is a dicot. Its vascular system is going to be the xylem, which moves the water throughout the plant, and the phloem, which moves the nutrients throughout the plant. And so this is a cut of a stem or a branch or a trunk of a tree. And so this arrow is pointing to the xylem and phloem, those vascular bundles. And if you notice, on a dicot, which is most of our plants, monocots are going to be grasses. And so these vascular systems are really close when we're talking about trees to the edge of those actual trees themselves. So we need to remember that when we're talking about our trees and planting our trees. So let's talk about the tree flare or the root flare. So the tree flare is the broadening of a trunk's tree, or the tree's trunk just above the soil line. So here is a great picture right here. This is going to be the tree flare or the root flare, whichever one you want to call it. This one, you can see it's starting here. So this one probably could be planted a little bit higher in the soil, depending upon the tree. This one definitely is showing all those roots on the top. So those roots should be covered to about here with soil. The other thing to remember is that some of our trees actually do have extremely shallow roots. And one of those is a maple tree. It's not uncommon to walk across the ground or the lawn and see those roots sticking up out of the soil. And that's with a maple tree, and that is their normal growth. So keep that in mind as well. We're really concerned about what's called girdling. Girdling is injury of the bark, the branch, the root. And essentially what that does is the hole that you would put the tree into, if it's all wonderful soil, I said it grows in a circle, those roots will, and so they will continue to grow around and across each other. And as they cross over each other, and you can see that here, they call what's called girdling. And if you go back to that vascular bundle where the water and the nutrients flow are on the towards the outer edge of the branches, the trunk, and the roots, and that girdles and it squeezes that vascular system so that the moisture can't go up in the tree and the nutrients can't go up into that tree either. So you need to remember that. So a donut versus a volcano. So here is our donut. We spread out away from the tree. The flare looks really nice there. This looks like a really nice planting. Here we have a volcano. Chances are the root flare, which should be even with the soil level line, is probably way down here in the mulch. So some things to think about when we're talking about volcanoes is this probably, and these trees are all in my neighborhood from this point on. So here it's a little bit, you can see it's a slope. They did try to put some mulch around here. The roots are starting to be exposed. The root flare is up here. This tree isn't doing very well. Here's one, this is a maple tree, so you see where the roots are sticking up, but you can also see some of them that are starting to crisscross themselves, and those roots are exposed. It probably should be shallower in the ground. If you notice, the root flare is right here, the tree flare, but notice where the soil surface is. It's down here. So this was a volcano, or it was a berm, such as this one on the right side. So you can definitely see how tall that tree is. It looks like there's a tree flare there, so it's correct in where its placement is. But however, the soil line is down here. So this has got some soil in it. However, it's not at the typical base of where it is. So these tree roots are coming out of this up here, and you notice this here is a root that's looking to go back under into the ground to do what it needs to do as well. Berms are always really pretty, and you think that it adds a lot to our landscapes, but that can be extremely detrimental to our trees. So this was in my old neighborhood when I was in Jefferson County. So they went ahead and did a volcano. They said our trees aren't doing well. Why? So I went up and looked. If you notice, this is a root. And again, what the roots do is they want to come out and go parallel. However, because they have this mulch and soil level and did a volcano, those roots naturally are going to grow outward. But as soon as they grow outward, they reach the air. Roots don't grow in the air. Therefore, they're going to turn and go back into the soil. And what they do is they just grow around in a circle on top of each other. So here in the middle picture is the exact same tree. So we dug down where this line is here. This was all underneath the soil. This was above the soil line of this area up here. Notice this right here. That's one of those smaller roots. And it was actually growing into this trunk of this tree. We actually had to pull it out in order to see that. And then we had to keep digging. So here's the trowel, and look at how far, here's the line, and look at how far down before we come to that root flare. So this tree is girdling itself around and around in itself, and it's blocking off those xylem and phloem, those vascular systems. So the water going up and the nutrients going up and back and down has become essentially they're strangling themselves to death. Again, here is another type. We're talking about root ball cages and burlap. These are again in my new neighborhood. And again, here's that tree that was on that slight slope. And this tree, it looks like it was grafted. So the graft is up there. But if you're looking at it from this picture, you're like, yeah, okay, there's roots, it's sticking out. That's not a big issue. Well, it is. But what I really wanted to point out to you is the metal. And you can see it there. Whoops, sorry. And then you can also see it over here. So this tree apparently was in some sort of a root ball cage. And the people who put this in, they were landscapers, actually dropped that tree ball, that root ball, straight into the ground with that cage. Also, the burlap, and that's this tree down here, you can actually see the rope or what's left of the burlap ball. They took it and just placed it straight down into the ground. And what happens is that, again, that some of these areas here may be smaller. You can see this root right here is buttoned up against that metal part of that cage, and it's causing those vascular systems to not be well. They're going to burst, and they're not going to be able to supply the tree with the nutrients and the water that it needs. So here is a wonderful one of the good ones in my neighborhood. They've made a really, it's not a berm, it's just a total donut all the way around. They have the rocks for decoration. The root flare, it's not up close, but the root flare on this tree looked really nice. It's even with the ground. There's not going to be any girdling in a circle, and those roots are going to grow out horizontal to the earth. And this tree I expect to do really nice. And those are just some of the things and experiences that I'm actually seeing in my own neighborhood, things that I'd like for you to take into consideration as you think about planting new trees this fall.
Debbie, we have a couple of real quick questions here.
Okay.
I have trees that have been in pots all year due to lack of time to plant. Should I go ahead and plant them now or wait for them to go dormant?
It's okay if they don't have to be dormant, but you can go ahead and put them in, like the end of October timeframe. Just make sure you make the holes big enough. It's okay. I'd keep them where they are, just simply because chances are the ground is going to be really dry. And as a new tree is being put into the ground, you want to make sure that you continue to water it. And watering it appropriately could be a totally different topic, but you have to make sure that you keep those trees watered because they're new and they'll need that moisture, especially in areas that are really dry in Missouri.
And then the other question is, what if I planted my trees incorrectly last year, like too deep? Can I go ahead and correct that?
Gee, that's a hard question to answer. And others on my colleagues here may have an answer as well, and I could be wrong, or who knows. But I think really what it boils down to is how big and how far those roots have actually grown. And without seeing it, without knowing the size of it, that could be difficult to answer that question. You're welcome to send an email with some pictures in to us if you'd like. We can kind of decipher from there. But if it's planted too deep, chances are there will be some issues because you really want that root flare to be up at the ground level.
Okay, so Denise, I don't know if you heard that or not, but you can go ahead and maybe reach out to your local horticulture specialist and they might be able to help you with some of that, with that issue. All right, thank you.
All right, so we are out of time. And before we end, I'd just like everybody to know that we are going to start monthly on October 16th that should say 12 o'clock. It's from 12 to 1. And so we hope you will join us in October and then the third Wednesday after that until I believe it's through March. So you can still ask questions and you can submit those questions and we will answer them on the October Garden Hour or future Garden Hours. And with that, I just want everybody to have a good rest of the day and we'll see you in October. Thank you.
Jerry, don't stop yet. There's a question that came in. Oh, it was to me. Okay, so that's a raspberry one. I may have to send that to someone else. So I'm going to copy it. Okay, I got it, Jared. Thank you.